I never thought I'd become the kind of person who measures time in heartbeats, in shallow breaths taken in hospital corridors that smell like disinfectant and grief, but that's exactly who I am now, standing here at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in November when the rain hasn't stopped for 3 days and the call came through dispatch like a knife through silk, clean and devastating, a possible 10-56A, child in distress. And I'm pulling my jacket over my scrubs even though I'm off duty because I live 2 blocks from the address they're calling, and I just know in that animal way that mothers know things, that this is going to break something inside me that can't be fixed. The house is a 2-story colonial with peeling paint the color of old bruises, and I can see from half a block away that every light is blazing like someone's trying to hold back the dark with sheer electrical force, and there's a woman on the porch, my neighbor Margaret from 3 streets over, holding a little girl who can't be more than 6, wrapped in a purple blanket that's too thin for this weather. And the girl is shaking so hard I can see it from here, not from cold but from something else, something worse. I'm running now, my sneakers splashing through puddles that reflect the streetlights like broken mirrors, and Margaret sees me coming, her face collapsing with relief because she knows I'm a pediatric nurse at County General, she knows I delivered my own son 9 years ago in that same hospital, she knows I buried him there too, 4 months ago, leukemia, 47 days from diagnosis to the end, and she's saying something about the boy. There's a boy inside, upstairs, not breathing right. And the parents are gone, just gone, the kids were alone, and I'm already moving past her, through the front door that's hanging open like a mouth mid-scream, taking the stairs 2 at a time while behind me I hear the sirens finally starting their approach, that distinctive wail that used to make me feel safe when I was young before I learned that sometimes help arrives too late. The upstairs hallway is dark except for one room at the end, and I can hear it now, that wet, rattling sound that every medical professional learns to recognize, the sound of lungs that aren't working right, and when I push open the door I see him, maybe 8 years old, maybe 9, so thin his ribs are visible through his stained t-shirt, lying on a bare mattress with no sheets, his lips tinged blue in the half-light from a lamp with no shade, and his breathing is shallow, rapid, his chest sucking in with each attempt to get air, and I'm beside him in an instant, my fingers on his neck finding a pulse that's too fast, thready, my other hand on his forehead finding fever so high it's like touching a stove, and I'm calling out to Margaret to get the girl inside, to stay with her, to tell the paramedics where to come, and this boy's eyes flutter open, unfocused, glassy, and he whispers something that sounds like sorry or maybe help or maybe just a sound that humans make when they're too far past words to articulate fear. I'm checking his airway, tilting his head back, listening to those crackles in his lungs that tell me pneumonia, severe, probably days old, untreated, and there are bruises on his arms, finger-shaped, weeks old in various stages of healing, yellowing at the edges, and I'm already constructing the timeline in my head, already seeing the pattern, and my hands are moving on autopilot. Trained by 10 years in pediatric emergency medicine, but my heart is somewhere else, remembering another boy, my boy Ethan, with his father's eyes and my stubborn chin, who loved dinosaurs and refused to eat green foods and who got so sick so fast that we barely had time to say all the things we needed to say, and I watched him slip away in a hospital room much cleaner than this while my parents, my own parents, called twice, sent flowers once, and didn't come to the funeral because my sister Ashley had a destination wedding dress fitting in Milan that same weekend, because her wedding, her fairy tale $300,000 wedding, was more important than their grandson's goodbye, and when they called me 2 weeks after we buried Ethan in the small plot I could afford, asking about the trust fund his paternal grandmother had left him, the $850,000 that was supposed to go to his education, asking if I'd consider helping Ashley with her wedding costs since Ethan doesn't need it anymore and Ashley's fiancé's family wasn't as financially flexible as they'd hoped, I'd hung up and hadn't spoken to them since, but here I am trying to save another child while the ghosts of my own parenting, my own loss, press against my ribs like hands. The paramedics burst through the door, Carlos and Jennifer, I know them from the hospital, and I'm rattling off vitals, respiratory distress, fever approximately 104, signs of chronic neglect and possible abuse, needs immediate intubation, and Carlos is already setting up the oxygen while Jennifer radios ahead to County General, and we're moving together like a machine that knows its purpose. And I ride with them in the ambulance because someone needs to tell them what I saw, what I know, and In the harsh white light of the rig I can see this boy more clearly, the dirt under his nails, the hollow of his cheeks, the way his body seems to fold in on itself like something that's learned to take up less space, learned to be invisible, to not ask for things like food or warmth or safety. At the hospital it's controlled chaos, Dr. Reeves taking over with her steady hands and steady voice, respiratory therapy arriving with the ventilator because his oxygen saturation is dropping despite the mask, and I'm giving my statement to a police officer who looks maybe 25, with kind eyes and a wedding ring that's still shiny new. And his name is Officer Brendan Mitchell and he's writing everything down while a social worker named Patricia Holm, sharp-featured and sharp-voiced, arrives with her clipboard and her court-ordered authority, and she's asking me questions in that clipped way that CPS workers develop after years of seeing the worst humanity has to offer, and I'm telling her about the bruises, the neglect, the little sister downstairs who hasn't spoken a word except to say her brother's name, Caleb, over and over like a prayer or a warning. They find the parents 4 hours later at a casino 40 miles away, and when they bring them in for questioning they're still drunk, still reeking of cigarette smoke and cheap perfume, and the mother, who can't be more than 30 but looks 50, keeps saying it's all a misunderstanding, that they just went out for a few hours, that the kids were fine, that Caleb's always been dramatic about being sick, and the father, silent and sullen with knuckles scraped raw, won't make eye contact with anyone, and Patricia tells me in the hallway, under fluorescent lights that make everyone look half dead, that she's seen this before, that she has 24 hours to gather enough evidence to remove the children permanently or they go back, and there's something in her voice that sounds almost like fatigue, like she's tired of fighting battles she can't always win, and I think about Ashley's wedding, about my parents calling it the event of the decade, about the designer dress that cost more than I make in 3 months, about how they couldn't spare one day, one single day, to mourn with me, to hold me while I fell apart, to acknowledge that their grandson existed and mattered and was loved. Caleb stabilizes by dawn, intubated and sedated, his small body finally getting the oxygen it needed, and his sister Mia is in a foster placement temporarily, but she keeps asking for him, keeps crying for her brother, and Officer Mitchell tells me she's the one who called 911, that she used a neighbor's phone. That at 6 years old she knew her brother was dying and she knew her parents wouldn't help and she saved his life with that call, and I see my own Ethan in her, that same fierce protectiveness I had, that same desperate need to fix things that are breaking, and I can't walk away, I can't just go home and pretend I didn't see this, didn't feel this, and so I start making calls. By noon I've liquidated the college fund I'd kept for Ethan, the one I couldn't touch before because it felt like erasing him, like admitting he wasn't coming back, and I've called my lawyer, the one who handled Ethan's estate, the one who knows about the trust fund my parents wanted, the $850,000 that's sitting in an account I haven't touched because every dollar feels like a piece of my son I can't spend, can't risk, can't let go of, but I'm calling her now and asking about legal guardianship. About emergency custody, about what it takes to fight for children who aren't mine but somehow have become mine in the way that trauma creates families out of strangers. Patricia finds me in the hospital cafeteria at 2 p.m., drinking coffee that tastes like regret and exhaustion, and she sits down across from me with her files and her tired eyes and says, "You can't save every child," and I say, I couldn't save my own, and something passes between us, some unspoken understanding that we're both here because we've lost things that can't be recovered and we're trying to build something from the wreckage. And she tells me that if I'm serious about this, about taking Mia and Caleb when he recovers, about fostering them with the possibility of adoption, that she can fast-track the approval, that she can see I'm qualified, that she needs people who give a damn and I clearly do, but she warns me it won't be easy, that these kids are traumatized, that they'll push me away, that they'll test every boundary because boundaries have only ever hurt them before, and I nod because I understand trauma. I understand how pain makes you mean, makes you defensive, makes you hurt people before they can hurt you, and I survived my own childhood, my own parents who loved appearances more than their children, who measured worth in social status and bank accounts, who skipped their grandson's funeral for a wedding dress fitting and then had the audacity to ask for his money, and maybe that's why I can do this, maybe that's why I have to. The confrontation happens at 6 p.m. in Patricia's office, my parents somehow finding out through the family grapevine that I'm liquidating assets, that I'm making decisions about Ethan's trust, and they show up with Ashley in tow, her engagement ring catching the light like a tiny sun, her face pinched with the kind of concern that's really just thinly veiled greed, and my mother, elegant even in anger, her silver hair perfect, Her designer suit unwrinkled, starts talking about family, about responsibility, about how Ashley deserves her dream wedding, about how it's what Ethan would have wanted, to see his aunt happy, and something inside me, something that's been building since the funeral they missed, since the hospital vigils they skipped, since every childhood disappointment and adult abandonment, finally breaks. I tell them about Caleb, about Mia, about children who are alive and suffering and who need help now, not dead children whose money they want to spend on ice sculptures and designer centerpieces, and my voice is shaking but it's strong, stronger than I've ever been with them, and I tell them that every penny of Ethan's trust is going to support his brothers, his sisters, the children I'm going to foster and adopt, the family I'm going to build from love instead of obligation. And my mother's face goes white, then red, and she says I'm being selfish, that I'm not thinking clearly, that grief has made me irrational, and Ashley is crying, actual tears, saying her wedding is ruined, and my father, who hasn't said a word through all of this, finally speaks, his voice quiet and cold, and says, if you do this, you're no longer our daughter, and I stand up and I look at them, really look at them, these people who gave me life but never really gave me love, who taught me that appearances matter more than truth, that money matters more than people, that some children are worth mourning and some aren't, and I say, I stopped being your daughter the day you chose a party over your grandson's funeral, and I walk out, and I don't look back. Caleb wakes up 3 days later, confused and scared, and when he sees me sitting beside his bed he flinches, expecting punishment for being sick, for needing help, for existing, and it takes everything in me not to cry, not to let him see how much his fear breaks me, and I speak softly, telling him he's safe, that his sister is safe, that no one's going to hurt him anymore, and he doesn't believe me, I can see it in his eyes. But he's too weak to argue, too exhausted to fight, and over the following weeks, as he heals, as Mia moves into my apartment with her purple blanket and her nightmares, as I navigate home studies and court dates and therapy appointments, as I sell my car and downsize my life and restructure everything around these two small humans who didn't ask to be abandoned but were, I start to understand what my son's death was supposed to teach me, that love isn't about biology, it's about showing up. It's about being present in the hard moments, it's about sacrifice. That doesn't ask for anything in return, and Ethan's trust fund, his grandmother's gift, becomes the foundation for something he would have loved, a home for children who need one, a place where being sick isn't a burden, where asking for help isn't weakness, where love isn't conditional on performance or perfection, and 6 months later, when Mia calls me mama for the first time, tentative and quiet like she's testing whether the word will break things, whether I'll reject her for wanting too much, and when Caleb lets me hug him after a nightmare without going rigid with fear, I know that grief doesn't end, that I'll always miss Ethan, that there will always be a hole in my heart shaped like a 9-year-old boy who loved dinosaurs, but grief can transform, can become something else, can become the fuel that drives us to be better, to do better, to love harder and fiercer and more bravely than we knew we could. And my parents never call, never write, never acknowledge their grandchildren, and Ashley's wedding happens without me, without my money, a smaller affair that she complains about on social media, and I don't care at all, because I'm too busy building a life that matters, a family that chooses each other every day, and on the anniversary of Ethan's death, I take Caleb and Mia to his grave, and we plant flowers, purple ones for Mia's blanket, blue ones for Caleb's eyes, yellow ones for the sunshine Ethan brought into my life, and I tell them about their brother, about his laugh and his stubbornness and his bravery, and they listen with the kind of attention that children give to stories about people they wish they'd known, and Mia asks if Ethan would have liked them, and I say yes, he would have loved you so much, and that night, tucked into beds that are warm and safe, in a home that smells like dinner and laundry detergent and normalcy, these children who are mine now in every way that matters, they sleep without nightmares, and I stand in the doorway watching them breathe, steady and sure, and I think about trust funds and weddings and funerals and all the ways we measure love, and I know with absolute certainty, that Ethan's legacy isn't money sitting in an account, it's Caleb's healing lungs and Mia's growing confidence and a family built from brokenness, and that's worth more than $850,000. Worth more than my parents' approval, worth more than anything I could have imagined in those dark days after I buried my son, and the rain has finally stopped, and morning is coming, and we're going to be okay.